Last time on John Boorman's Lord of the Rings, we saw hobbits going down a beard slide, Frodo and Galadriel bearing the ring, quote unquote, and Boromir and Aragorn kissing and making up. We're going to finish it tonight. What else weird stuff can there be? All right, so this is the second part of John Boorman's infamous Lord of the Rings script that was never made. We're continuing from 2 weeks ago. We're going to go down, introduce ourselves, tell you who we're playing, and we'll get back right to it. I'm Colin. I will be narrating.
I'm Langley. I'm Pippin and Saruman.
Hey, I'm Asa, and I can't follow a simple list, so I'm playing Aragorn.
Hi, I'm Brian. I am Gandalf.
I'm Lauren, and I am Frodo.
I'm Dean. I'm Samwise.
I'm Fletch, and I am Mary.
I'm Matt, and I am Legolas.
Exterior, crossroads, and hill. The 8 members of the Fellowship, their wounds dressed, are trudging along a path.
Wait, the doom of choice is upon us. South with Boromir to Minas Tirith, or north to Mordor? Shall we break our fellowship and each go his own way? I am not Gandalf and cannot play his part. Frodo, the burden is laid upon you.
Give me an hour, and I will speak.
Boromir's eyes follow Frodo as he wanders off. He walks up the hill and near the top sits down on a rock. A figure is stalking up to him from behind. In front of Frodo stands Boromir.
The orcs may be near. I feared for you, and 2 heads together may.
I know what I should do, but I'm afraid, Boromir, afraid. There is warning in my heart.
What warning?
Against delay and against trust in the strength and the truth of men.
He flexes the muscles of his arms and slaps it.
But for this arm, orcs would be roasting hobbits in the Shire today.
I do not doubt the valor of your race, but the world is changing. If your strength fails, what then?
There's hope until we do fail.
No hope while the ring lasts.
The ring. Let me look at this little trinket. The ring of power. Such a little thing. It's a gift, I say. Only the fearless, the ruthless, they alone will gain victory.
Boromir, to give vent to his intensity, leaps to his feet. Frodo jumps up and moves away. Boromir holds out his hand as if expecting Frodo to give him the ring. He becomes strangely quiet, moving slowly towards Frodo, stalking him. Frodo retreats, fearful now, and as he does so, gropes inside his tunic for the ring. Boromir leaps forward to grab Frodo. Frodo slips the ring on his finger and vanishes. Clutching for the invisible Frodo, Boromir stumbles and falls. For a moment, he is motionless. Then he rises, crying out.
What have I done? Frodo! Frodo! A madness took me. Come back!
Bellowing and crying, Boromir staggers off down the hill. Inside the vision of the ring, Frodo is visible again, but not to Boromir. Various locations, day. Frodo sees, within the Ring of Power, far-off lands drawing closer and rising up in front of him. The landscape shrinks under his eye until he can see all of Middle-earth. In the misty mountains, orcs swarm out of holes like ants. Under a forest, a battle is raging. Wild wargs roam the plains. And then he sees Minas Tirith, a fortress city of towers and battlements, bright banners flying on its turrets. Frodo smiles, but then his face falls.
Mordor!
Beyond Minas Tirith is a monolithic barrier, the Great Wall of Mordor. Beyond the wall is a desert plain. Above them looms a volcano.
Mount Doom!
The light grows into a single socketless eye, rimmed with fire, glazed, yellow as a cat's eye. The eye begins to rove, searching this way and that. It seems to be probing towards Frodo, for finally it stares directly at him. Frodo is transfixed by it. He shudders. The eye grows larger, moving towards him. He is afraid, but fascinated. He takes hold of the ring, ready to pull it off. The eye gets steadily larger, filling all of Mordor. Frodo jerks the ring off his finger. His vision returns to normal.
I will go alone, and now.
He strides towards Mordor. Meanwhile, back at the crossroads, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Sam, Merry, and Pippin are anxiously awaiting Frodo's return.
When he left, the shadow was there, but now it's crept up to here.
And Boromir, what holds him?
Aragorn runs off in the direction Frodo took. The others follow.
With me!
They almost collide with Boromir.
The ring. Frodo.
Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Sam understand and rush on. Merry and Pippin, who are lagging behind, reach Boromir. Merry takes his hand and caresses it. Merry gives him a reprimanding look.
This is no time to play the clown.
Orcs not more than 20 feet behind are closing in. Boromir sees them too. It is a welcome release for him. With an angry roar, he wipes his eyes with his forearms as he draws his swords, his own and half of the sword that was broken.
Hobbit sense! Hobbit sense! Thank!
Meanwhile, Aragorn is searching for Frodo's tracks. He runs bent double. He circles around and finds some signs which lead him upwards. Far below, he sees Frodo moving steadfastly away towards Mordor. Some way behind is Sam running to catch up with his master, faintly calling his name. Frodo does not look back. Aragorn is perplexed, unsure how to interpret this. Boromir fights ferociously and desperately against the orcs.
Elendil, the Shire!
Bleeding, struck by many arrows, he fights over the huddled bodies of Merry and Pippin. He hurls himself at the orcs, but he is pierced again and again and slumps to the ground. Still, he shields Merry and Pippin as best he can, but orcs hold him off with spears while an Uruk orc snatches up Merry and Pippin and runs off howling victoriously, a hobbit dangling from each hand. Boromir lifts his great horn to his bleeding mouth and a deafening blast breaks from it.
Boromir! Boromir!
In succession, first Gimli, then Legolas hear the horn and are frozen in their tracks. They see Aragorn charging the orcs is what he meant to say. He said changing the orcs. They go too. The sound of the horn falters and fades. The orcs scatter into the trees. Aragorn helps the dying Boromir.
The halflings, the orcs, have taken them. Aragorn, my blood brother, take the sword that was broken. Go to Minas Tirith in my place.
Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fall.
You want to make out a little bit more again?
Excuse me. This is a bitter end. We have failed. The fellowship is all in ruin. Frodo has gone his own way. The ring has done its evil work.
Gaston.
See, that should have been the intermission. Anyway, the hill. Boromir lies buried under a mound of stone in the roots of a withered tree at the prow of a hill. Gimli adorns it with the weapons of the vanquished orcs, their curved blades sticking out of the stones like spines on a porcupine. Aragorn, his knee bent, holds the two halves of the sword that was broken. They are pressed to his forehead in salute.
May this withered tree blossom with the flesh of Boromir, son of Denethor, the steward of Minas Tirith.
What are the rumors of the earth?
The orcs go north, moving fast.
Gimli and I will not forsake Merry and Pippin to the orcs. Our ways part, for Minas Tirith lies far to the south. Aragorn, farewell.
I will go north with you.
But you are held by a death pledge to Boromir, man. You must go to Minas Tirith.
And yet, I will go with you.
Would you set two halflings above the plight of a great city?
I cannot, and yet I will.
Landscape of boulders and cliff. I appreciate you being racked with inner conflict there. Sam and Frodo struggle across a brutal, unrelenting country. They come to the edge of a cliff. Below it extends a vast, misty marshland. Beyond the bog is the great wall of Mordor.
Phew! These bogs, the stinking marshes!
I feel as naked as these rocks as that eye.
Frodo is already descending, searching for footholds in the cliff face. Sam joins him. Plain, sunset. Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas run at a fierce pace. Two broken bodies lie across their path. They exchange looks of alarm and run on towards them. The bodies are orcs. They are relieved.
Here, the crumbs of Lembas. Dead or alive, the hobbits are still with the orcs.
A white, riderless horse is running out of the sun. It gallops unswervingly across the arid plain, its hooves throwing up puffs of dust. The companions watch it admiringly. The mane flows, muscles surge through its glistening coat. Aragorn makes a move to catch it, getting in its path, but the horse curves away as it passes.
How well we could have used him, yet he has some deep purpose of his own.
Such beauty could not serve evil.
It comes on the wings of song, out of the forgotten days.
Ruefully, they break into a run again, forcing their tired legs to pound the hard earth. Cliff, night. Sam and Frodo are climbing down the steep face of the cliff with great caution, helping each other. They are continuously in danger of losing their grip and footing on the sheer, slippery rock face.
How long will it take us, Master Frodo, to finish this job?
This job? This is a great quest. And what hope is there that we shall ever finish it? And if we do, will we even live to tell the tale?
Sorry, I was just worrying about things. Master, to keep my head from going dizzy. If we go with a tight belt and a light tooth, the limbus will last, I reckon, 3 days or so.
Frodo smiles, his pomposity pricked.
Now tell me, Master, what if you come to a place where there's nowhere to put your feet or hands?
Frodo is about to answer when he loses his own footing and begins to slide down the cliff. Desperately, he claws at the slimy moss, but fails.
Master, don't fall!
Good advice.
Yeah. Here I come!
Darkness. Then Sam's eyes adjust, and he
So
sees Frodo
suggestive.
lying next to him with a smile on their face. They laugh at themselves, catch their breath, and rub their bruises.
Master Frodo, if we can't laugh, we haven't lost hope, have we? If we can laugh, I don't know what the hell to say.
They find they're at the bottom of the cliff between great mossy boulders. In front of them, the marshes begin.
We haven't lost hope, Sam, and we haven't lost Golem.
Precious, my precious, cautious. Where is it? 'Tis ours.
What's his precious? Does he mean the...
Sam points to the ring on Frodo's chest.
The thieves, the filthy thieves as of my precious.
Gollum's face catches the moonlight. He slips and falls to the ground with a shrill shriek. Gollum recovers and, hissing and spitting, rises to his feet. In front of Frodo and Sam stands a thin, loathsome creature, about the size of a hobbit. He can't even spell hobbit, apparently, with a large head and scrawny neck.
Nasty, nasty, shivery light it is. It hurts our eyes.
Sam leaps out of the shadows, jumping Gollum. Gollum recovers from surprise and clings to Sam, wrapping his prehensile arms and legs around him. He squeezes Sam in a deathly grip and sinks his teeth into his neck. All that Sam could do is butt his head against Gollum. Frodo springs out with Sting in hand and thrusts the blade under Gollum's eyes.
Let go, Golem. This is Sting, Bilbo's blade. You have seen it before once upon a time.
Gollum goes limp, releasing Sam, who staggers to his feet. Sam encourages it happens to a lot of hobbits. Frodo stands above him and holds the point of Sting at Gollum's throat.
Don't hurt us. Don't let them, my precious. They won't hurt us, will they? Nice little hobbitses.
Let's kill him.
He deserves death, but look at him.
Yes, wretched we is. Wretched. Oh,
Gollum sits up, cunning shows in his eyes.
and where are they going in these cold lands, we wonders?
Gollum casts a glance towards Mordor, but turns away in pain and distress.
He wonders. He wants to know. His last is precious.
You know we're going to Mordor.
We guessed. And we don't want them to go, does we?
You creature of mud and slime, you find us a path through these marshes.
We wills. But nice hobbitses must not go to those places. Orcs, thousands of...
Frodo whacks him with the broadside of Sting. Gollum shivers at the contact with the sword.
Ah, a hobbit blade. Ah, forged by dwarves. Ah, keen as elvish eyes as... Ah,
Silence! We shall rest now, Sam. And at dawn you shall lead us through the marshes.
the big light hurts our eyes. We won't go under the big yellow face. We hates it. No.
Frodo begins to take out the ring and catches the moonlight. At the sight of the ring, Gollum is lashed into a frenzy, ready to assail Frodo, oblivious of Sting.
Gollum, I understand. Gollum, swear on the precious.
Yes, yes.
What would you swear?
To be good, to be very good. We swears to serve the master of the precious.
In Sam's eyes, Frodo towers over Gollum, who is now but a little whining dog at his master's feet. Frodo tucks the ring away and gives Gollum a light whack. Gollum rises and starts off, proceeding cautiously over the bogland, testing each footstep. Frodo and Sam follow. Marshes, dawn. Frodo, Sam, and Gollum trekking through a gully in the bogs.
Ah, Yellowface is coming.
Gollum, stop. We shall rest here.
Gollum stops, but immediately starts again. Frodo sees this and panics. He brandishes his sting and whacks it against the frying pan, which dangles from Sam's belt.
Gollum, you swore on the precious. I order you to stop.
Gollum slumps into the lowest and darkest I think he means darkest recess of the wet ground, and his limbs sprawl out. His eyelids begin to shut.
We've got to get some sleep, but not together, not with that villain. You go to sleep. I'll call you when I can't keep my eyes open. If I had his black heart, he wouldn't wake up again. Never.
Sam sits down against a rock, watching Gollum. Sam is satisfied that Gollum is sleeping. Again, his eyelids begin to close, and his head falls slowly onto his chest. Sam is asleep. Gollum rises, his eyes wide open. Plain, dawn. Aragorn looks around and kicks the others lightly. They get to their feet stiffly, and without a word, the three set off, running. Later, they reach the crest and stop.
Enough. My breath. Heart bursts.
Sorry, that was.
Aragorn searches the ground and finds some remains of bones and feathers.
They paused here to eat.
Horsemen, a great company of horse.
I see them, many horsemen. They ride against the orcs.
Come!
They set out again, running hard. Later, they stop once again, sweating and panting. In the far distance, distorted through a heat haze across the long grass, swords and lances flash and glisten as the battle continues.
Faster! The hobbits will be caught between lance and scimitar.
Later, the skirmish has ended, but where it took place, the ground is covered with mounds of burning orcs. They see chains of men passing the bodies over their heads and into the blazing pyres. At last, the three run on to the site of the skirmish. The grasses are flattened this way and that. Smoldering pyres of charred orc carcasses fill the air with smoke. Horses graze. The riders are of the race of men, rough-featured with red faces and flaxen hair. Shouts of alarm sound out, and the horsemen grab their swords and lances. A thicket of angry points quickly surround the strangers. Their leader comes forward on horseback, a tall man, his height emphasized by a crest of white horsetail flowing from his helmet.
You keep comic company and you know little of oars if you hunt them in this fashion?
Legolas plucks at his bow, which twangs gratingly, threateningly. Gimli lets a long leaf of grass fall from his mouth. It glides down through the air, alighting on the edge of the axe, cutting it in two.
The orcs took captive 2 of our friends. In such a need, a man that has no horse will go on foot. Our friends are halflings.
Halflings, the little people of children's songs. You hard running has fevered your head.
Aragorn throws back his cloak and sweeps out the 2 halves of the sword that was broken.
I am Aragorn, an heir of Elendil, a son of ancient Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken.
Gimli and Legolas also spring to arms. The riders step back, unnerved.
These are strange times. Dreams and legends spring to life out of the very grass.
Give us the news of the halflings!
We found none but orcs.
Aragorn gives orders to his companions.
Search among the carcasses for signs. I fear our quest ends in ashes.
Legolas and Gimli start off sadly and without much hope. Their leader sheathes his sword, and the riders allow them to pass, lowering their lances. The leader dismounts. Aragorn sheathes his sword.
I am Emer. My father is Theoden, king of the Rohan.
Rumor has it that King Theoden pays tribute to Sauron,
Éomer instantly tenses and grips his sword hilt.
yet you kill orcs.
I kill orcs. My father does not. My father is counseled against my counsel to avoid war at any cost.
Long was the alliance between Rohan and Minas Tirith, yet you do not aid them in their deepest peril. If Minas Tirith falls, Rohan will not stand.
These halflings, they manage better without us, it seems.
On his outstretched palm is a hobbit pipe. In the background, the horses of the riders of Rohan begin to stir restlessly.
They live.
Their tracks lead into the forest.
They laugh with delight. Gimli throws himself to the ground and listens.
Far off the sound, as if of 1,000 wild horses.
But it is only one creature and his steed.
A mounted figure galloping across the horizon, trailing a plume of dust. Legolas stares and bends away his gaze in disgust. The word Nazgul transmits like a sudden blaze among the riders.
3 horses of my dead riders to the hunters of the orcs. The Nazgul rides the plains of Rohan. Sauron holds us in contempt. To King Theoden, and one last plea for war.
He rears his horse. The riders respond by rearing their horses. 3 horses are corralled by the riders up to Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn. Aragorn addresses Eomer as he mounts into the saddle.
And I shall ride to Minas Tirith, but we shall not come alone. Many old friends and allies shall ride at our side.
And they ride off, Eomer and his men in one direction, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas in the other. Marshes, sundown. Frodo awakes. He shakes Sam, who sits up with a start. They look at each other in alarm. Gollum is not in sight. Sam looks terribly guilty.
He has sworn on the precious, on the precious.
Hissing sounds of Gollum approaching. Sam nudges Frodo.
Gollum, he's here!
Soiled with black mud, dripping with slime, Gollum walks up to Frodo and Sam. He is happily chewing worms and slavering.
Are we rested? Ready to go on? We was famished. Poor little thin him.
Marshes night. Frodo walks in Gollum's footsteps and Sam follows behind. Gollum weaves through an endless network of dark, stagnant pools and soft mires.
Nice mists. Nice thick mists. I can't catch us. Can't hurt us.
Gollum, what are these lights?
The lights are everywhere, hundreds of flickering flames.
The tricksy lights. Candles of the dead. Yes, yes.
Mr. Frodo, don't look at them. Gollum doesn't look at them.
Sam trips and falls. The ground gurgles and flickers with light. Sam lifts his face out of the bog mud and sees just beneath the muddy waters rotting cadavers, shimmering with luminescent fumes. Sam rises, shaking.
I see dead people. Dead things, dead faces in the water.
Of elves, of men, of orcs, but I see no hobbits. Sam, do not fear. All that you see is dead and gone, but from memory.
Yes, yes. All dead, all rotten. There was a great battle long ago, yes, when I was young, before Precious came our way. Men and elves fought the orcses.
I have heard the old tales. Elves and men overcame by armies of Sauron, but he came back and the tale still runs on. We're in it now, us hobbits. Think of that, Sam.
Us? And is Gollum in our story too?
Hey, Gollum, would you like to be in this story? The hero or the villain?
We had a real name once. What would I like to be? We was the one who found the precious. We was, and the precious was with us once, with us always. We had a name and we lived by the great river and we burrowed under trees. We loved rootses. We was of hobbit kind.
Of hobbit kind?
Sam and Frodo burst out laughing. Sam does an imitation of Gollum's way of walking.
3 little columns in a row we shall be.
Sam and Frodo laugh heartily.
Never was there laughter in this fell land. We also will laughs.
Gollum, after a moment, emits a soft but terrifying giggle. Forest night. Terror-stricken after the laugh, Merry and Pippin stumble over each other as they weave an erratic path through the forest. Suddenly, they see that they are heading straight for a towering figure, cloaked and hooded, who is slowly opening his arms. They grind to a stop and fall in a heap. Kicking up a flurry of leaves, they spin around and rush off frantically in the opposite direction. They scamper through the forest only to crash into an apparently identical figure. His cloak is flung open and from it issues a glow of white light. The face which looks down upon the hobbits is that of Gandalf, except that the eyes are white instead of gray, and his expression is intense and pained.
It's Saruman.
Oh, hi, Saruman.
Yes.
I'm so. God, you guys act like you never crashed into a shadowy figure in the woods before. Tell me of yourselves.
Mary, it's Saruman, the bad wizard. Yes, that's it. Try and get his sword. There we are. And orcs were closing in all around us. Come on, Mary. Give us a hand.
Mary imitates growling orcs. The figure strains to listen, and his pained expression reveals an inner struggle, as if attempting to break through from a different plane of consciousness. Sure. Marsh's night. Frodo and Sam are fast asleep. Gollum pats Frodo on the head softly. His right hand runs through Frodo's hair.
Nice hobbits, sleepy heads. So tired.
The right hand clenches Frodo's hair.
Should we save them? Should we pull them out, my precious?
Right hand hesitates and then lets go of the hair. Left hand begins to pry open Frodo's vest to reach the ring.
Precious was ours, is ours, always is ours.
Right hand swings at left hand, knocking it away.
Hobbit is the master. We swore on the precious.
Right hand grasps Frodo by the hair again. Forest night.
And we were prisoners of this great orc who held us by the hair.
Illustrating this, Mary grunts and growls and rips out of the ground two great tufts of grass. He struts up and down, working up the nerve to throw them at the figure. Pippin glances at Mary and shakes his head.
He had a great sword. A sword. Suddenly he was attacked by men on horses, and the great orc.
Pippin points to Mary, who demonstrates how the orc was slain. Marsh, Dawn. Gollum stands above Frodo and Sam. Right hand flies at Frodo's head.
Master, wake up, please.
Left hand grabs right hand, and the two hands grapple with each other. Left hand flies free to grab the ring.
Our precious, for us. Oh.
But right hand stops it. The two hands clasp and claw each other. Forest, Dawn. Pippin is ham acting.
And a great battle all around us. And we just walked away. And above us, men, horses, orcs, swords, and we walked away beneath it all, we did.
Pippin walks jauntily away. Mary is puzzled and believes this is a signal to make a bolt for it.
Mary, let's show great Saruman, lend us the sword.
Pippin strides up to the figure, demanding the sword. The figure looks down, seeming to nod. Pippin, with great daring, extracts the sword from its sheath. The figure does not react. Pippin retreats, sword in hand, terrified, and hands it to Mary.
Mary, you do it. Take it back.
Mary climbs on Pippin's back, who nearly collapses under his weight, but he keeps on his nervous tirade.
And the great orc were above us, wielding that orc sword, and we just walked away.
Mary grunts and groans and wields the sword more awkwardly. Pippin howls, and they charge the figure.
For the Shire!
But the weight of the sword pulls Mary backwards, and the two of them crash to the ground. The figure explodes into laughter. On his face comes the beaming smile of Gandalf as his arms fly open in a grand gesture, as if suddenly life courses through his body again. Marsh's day. As though responding to Gandalf's gesture, Frodo stirs in his sleep. His eyelids quiver. Gollum leans over him, his whole body and face contorted in a spasm, his hands in a deadlock. One of his feet swings up, kicking himself in the stomach. Gollum doubles in pain and left hand flies free, immediately to be caught by right hand. Forest, day. Gandalf, recovering from a hearty laugh, is kneeling down over the two hobbits.
Hobbits. All wizards should have a hobbit or two in their care.
Gandalf, who talks and lives in riddles?
That's the Gandalf I remember.
Gandalf rises and stretches, and he lets out a great cry that is part joy, part pain. Marsh. Marsh's dawn. Gollum is contorted in a paroxysm of conflicting parts. One foot kicks the other off the ground, and Gollum plunges into the mire with a great splash.
Sir.
Frodo awakes and frantically struggles to escape from the mire.
Sam!
Sam awakens with a start, the mire already bubbling about his lips. He grasps Frodo's hand and he scrambles out. Frodo thrusts out his hand to Gollum, who reaches out to grab it, but his other hand prevents him. Amid hisses and a confusion of half-formed words, Gollum, the prey to paroxysms, sinks swiftly into the mire.
Gollum, you swore on the precious to take us to Mordor.
We did. Oh.
Gollum has sunk beneath the mire. Forest. Day. Gandalf stands majestically with his eyes and arms upraised to the sky. The hobbits are next to him, watching.
I was Gandalf, but for hobbits I will always be Gandalf. I can see many things far off, but things that are close at hand I cannot see.
Riddles. That's the power of wizards.
A hawk descends on a winding spiral and alights on Gandalf's arm. He grasps the hawk's head firmly and stares deep into its eye. He sees, fragmented and scrambled, the sights that the hawk's eye has taken in.
There rides mighty Aragorn, and elf and dwarf ride at his side. Where is Frodo? Does Aragorn bear the ring? If I have doubts, the enemy will share my doubts. This I know because I have become more like the Dark Lord. Hobbits, your Gandalf is dangerous. More dangerous than anything you will ever meet unless you are brought alive before Sauron himself. Ah.
Sam and Frodo.
Sam and Frodo live?
Alive, but beyond our reach. From the wraith essence of the Nine, a Nazgul has risen. It rides unchecked the plains of Rohan. What's with old King Theoden? Has he slept beneath the shadow of the shadow? Shadowfax, answer my call. Faster, faster, you will carry us all, and bear our hopes to gather aid. I couldn't think of a rhyme.
Yeah.
It hasn't all come back to him yet. The fast gallop of a horse is heard approaching. The hawk startles and takes up to the air. The great white horse, Shadowfax, gallops up to them. Gandalf leaps onto his back, snatches the hobbits up behind him, and speeds away through the forest. Marshes beneath the Great Wall of Mordor. Sam and Frodo slowly edge along the Great Wall, searching for a way in. The two hobbits look up, the immense wall above them. It seems to sway and swerve against a churning pall. Frodo shields his eyes. Sweat rolls down his face.
Yellow face.
Poor Gollum. He reminded me of the weather in the Shire. Now rain, now sun, now wind, now frost. Master, there isn't a hole in this wall, not even for a hobbit.
They edge on. The chain weighs on Frodo's neck and has rubbed it raw. Frodo lifts the chain for relief.
I must rest a while. It's heavy on me, Sam lad. Very heavy.
Sam points ahead. A withered oak tree is growing out of the base of the wall.
Look, where there's life, there's hope.
Branches of the oak tree, day. Sam and Frodo are lying in the boughs of the tree, exhausted. Sam offers Frodo a piece of lembas.
Have a bite, Mr. Frodo, then a bit of sleep.
How can we sleep under a sky like that? Is it night or day?
Sam sniffs back a tear and takes Frodo's head in his lap.
Let's say it's time for a midday nap.
Sam begins to sing and cradle Frodo, his own eyelids drooping.
The summer lies upon the world, and in a noon of gold, beneath the roof of sleeping leaves, the dreams of trees unfold.
I hope this tree is a good tree in a bad place, if that's possible.
He gives the tree a friendly slap and begins to chant as he falls off into sleep.
Eat earth, dig deep, drink water, go to sleep. Eat earth, dig deep, drink water, go to sleep.
Gatehouse and courtyard of Theoden's castle. Along a path lined with oak trees, Gandalf, his white cloak billowing, gallops Shadowfax up to the gatehouse. Soldiers of Rohan come forward to challenge him, but he sweeps them aside and ride in along the courtyard. As the wind whips up his cloak, Merry and Pippin are glimpsed hanging on behind him. Passage day. Shadowfax rears up and hammers his hooves against the door. It bursts open and Gandalf rides into the throne room of King Theoden. A large hall decorated with a high beamed roof supported by carved wooden pillars, decorated with skulls of horses. It has a rough-hewn air of a tough Spartan people. Tapestries drape the wall, telling of the martial deeds of the riders of Rohan. But superimposed on the masculine rugged structure are more sophisticated decorations. King Theoden sits upon an austere throne of wood, carved to the shape of a horse, the seat of which has been softened with cushions. He is wizened with a pale, wise face and heavy-lidded eyes. His counselor, a thin, nervous hunchback, sits at his feet, and to one side stands his daughter Eowyn, serving wine to her father. She is a beautiful maiden with intense, taut features. The women of the court are finely and provocatively dressed, and the men wear elaborate doublets and codpieces. Stewards move along them with pitchers of wine. Didn't have time for tree beer, but you mentioned the codpieces. Good to know. Gandalf's violent entrance disrupts this pleasant scene. Only the king remains seated.
Guards! Guards! Who permits this foul intrusion?
Hail Theoden, King of Rohan, I, Gandalf the White, come to warn you of a mortal danger that will soon engulf your pretty vanities. I come to rouse you from your feather cushions and put saddles in their place.
Gandalf climbs down from Shadowfax, and Merry and Pippin scramble down after him and hide in the skirts of his cloak. The old king rises painfully from his seat, leaning heavily on a staff made from a horse's thigh. His frame, now racked with age, was clearly once tall and proud.
Troubles ever follow you like crows, Master Gandalf. There is no welcome for you here.
Seize this base offender of the king's peace. Throw the Stormcrow to the dogs.
King Theoden, I bring aid.
Aid? Do you bring men? Horses? Are these your warriors?
Wormtongue darts forward and pulls Merry and Pippin from under Gandalf's cloak. The courtiers laugh at the cowering hobbits, but Gandalf swings his staff and it crackles ominously. Wormtongue drops the hobbits and scampers back to the king.
Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth, Wormtongue. I have not passed through fire and death to bandy crooked words with the one who secretly serves the Dark Lord of Mordor.
Lies and slander, sir.
Stormcrow, you are a picker of bones, a carrion fowl that grows fat on war.
He points to Wormtongue.
He has counseled me and kept these lands in peace through troubled times.
And one worm have eaten out the heart of a great people. I spit on your guards. I set my halflings against your paltry soldiers.
Gandalf kicks Merry and Pippin forward. Stirred by his words, they draw their swords and face up to the perplexed soldiers. Before the doubtful prowess of the hobbits can be tested, Gandalf springs forward and tears down one of the tall drapes that hangs against the wall from the high roof. Daylight bursts in, throwing Gandalf into a blinding silhouette.
Are these the weapons of the riders of Rohan, silks and satins?
He swirls the cloth about his head. It twirls and coils in the air, forming strange shapes. The courtiers watch, mesmerized.
Will you hear the truth or turn away my tale before it strikes your ears?
Cheap wizard tricks. Dwemercraft, my lord, expel him before you are bewitched.
Father, hear what he has to say. Words cannot harm a warrior king.
Theoden does not respond to his daughter or to the hunchback's plea.
In Moria I fell, caught in the coils of the Balrog. Deep into the abyss, beyond light and knowledge we fell. His fire was about me, and I was burned. But his fire was quenched by a cold that was the tide of death. And now he was a thing of slime, stronger than a strangling snake. We fought under the living earth where time is not counted. Far below the deepest delvings of the dwarves, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Even Sauron knows them not. Darkness took me. I strayed out of thought and time. I was broken, naked on the hard horn of the world. Long lay I so. Then came faint to my ears the gathered rumors of all the lands, the springing and the dying, the singing and the weeping, and the slow everlasting groan of overburdened stone. Then came a vision of the agony of Middle-earth. My heart was open to all the hurts of the world. The evil of Sauron pressed upon me, crushing me. The life that has lived in me in all my forms ebbed away. But a silly voice called me back, a hobbit voice, and I had a dream of halflings. They were sore afraid, yet braver than many kings. They were foolish, yet wiser than many wizards. They lived in despair, yet they found hope. Their spirits drew me back from the everlasting night. Now in this world there still remains a short time of doubt. Now we must risk all for one last battle against the evil that would overwhelm us, and you, Theoden, lord of these great lands, shall turn the scales. Ride out once more, old man. Listen to the hooves that surely beat in your great heart.
Theoden rises to his feet, a smile breaking across his face, dispelling the wrinkles of age.
All wars seem urgent to the young. I do not see this one as special as you claim, but I should ride again.
In the hall there is great commotion. Eowyn falls to her knees and holds the king's robe. She speaks strong and clear.
Were I, Eowyn, taught features, a warrior, and not a king's daughter, I would have leapt to my saddle while still he spoke.
Bran Drescher, ladies and gentlemen.
Meanwhile, Wormtongue throws himself at Theoden's dagger in hand. At Theoden, dagger in hand. Merry and Pippin trip him up and turn him over.
Too late, feeble king.
Theoden draws his sword. He grows in power with every moment, shedding his years as a horse throws off its winter coat in spring.
To Minas Tirith! To Minas Tirith!
The court responds with frantic enthusiasm. In the surge of excitement, Theoden thrusts his sword, spinning through the air. The plains, day. The sword descends and Theoden catches it again. He is on horseback, galloping at the head of the riders of Rohan, ignoring this obvious shout-out to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Armed and armored, helms flowing, favors flying. His eyes shine with the pleasure of the gallop. Gandalf on Shadowfax rides at the king's side. From under Gandalf's cloak, Pippin's face appears. He looks about him with wide-eyed wonder.
Mary!
Amazing!
Now, this is good enough to go into Bilbo's book.
Here is the parting of the ways. My captains shall divide together many men and horses. I shall seek the love of my son Eomer.
I too will go my own ways on Shadowfax.
We meet in Minas Tirith.
The tree, day. Up in the branches, Sam awakes to feel the tree trembling and shuddering. He shakes Frodo awake.
Master, it's the tree. It's angry or something.
I'm sure it's fighting the wall.
They look down and their guess is confirmed. The wall is crumbling as the roots advance.
It's true. What a tree to take on a wall as mighty as this. Hold on.
The hobbits cling on desperately as the wall crashes onto them. Huge rocks thunder down and the brave tree bends under their weight. The trunk groans and the roots are torn, screaming from the rocks as the tree falls under the weight of the wall. Sam's head appears from under the rubble.
Master, are you there?
Frodo emerges, coughing. In the far distance, Mount Doom belches smoke and sends its pall over everything. A massive tower rises to a great height. On the road, hordes of orcs, uruks, and trolls march along the trail with mechanical, jerky movements, but an irresistible impulse makes Frodo peer through a crack at the tower. At its summit, a pinpoint of light appears. It grows into the shape of an eye and turns its gaze towards Sam and Frodo. Frodo groans under its awful power. His hand goes to the ring.
I must put it on, Sam.
You're lost if you do, Master.
And I shall die if I don't.
Sam takes Frodo's hand and pulls it away from the ring. The eye searches, then turns its searing gaze upon the column of orcs. Frodo's hand relaxes. Frodo and Sam panic afresh at the new hazard of orcs. They are still tangled in the branches of a tree.
Serve us once more, brave tree.
He drags a bushy branch clear of the rubble, and Frodo follows suit with another. They stand the branches upright and hide inside them. The orcs converge in the rubble and start to rebuild the walls, swearing and shoving one another as they bend under the labor. The captain quickens the work with a many-thonged lash. Whenever the orcs have their backs turned, Sam and Frodo move a few feet further away, shredded by their branches. When the captain's gaze turns towards them, they keep stock still again. Soon they are well into the land of Mordor. Peering through the leaves of their branches, they look in awe at the endless column of troops, horses, and engines of war, passing across the desert, plain towards the distant gates.
Poor Boromir. I hope he gets back to Minas Tirith in time to meet his onslaught.
Montage, converging of Minas Tirith. Shadowfax gallops along the high rim of a hill with Gandalf's cloak streaming out behind. A host of orcs coils slowly towards the great gates. Aragorn, followed by rangers of the north, rides through an ancient battlefield. Aragorn is standing in his saddle, arms raised in salute. He calls out a deep, wordless cry. In response, the dead, men and elves, rise up, ripping open their graves. They stagger to their feet. The living corpses limp behind the horsemen. An army of the dead has been gathered. Dawn. Legolas runs from branch to a dark forest, calling out. Tree elves appear. Gimli gallops up to the opening of a great pit. From the bottom of the pit, emerging out of burrowings, squinting like moles, dwarves look up and cheer. They toss their axes and clamber up and hopefully don't kill anybody with axes being tossed. The hosts of Mordor pass through the great gates. Theoden gallops at the head of a great company of the riders of Rohan. Éomer leaps on his father's horse and embraces him passionately. The riders cheer. A column of orcs advances along a dusty trail in Mordor. They rush towards Frodo and Sam, who look at each other in dismay.
Run for it, Mr. Frodo!
The hobbits reach a canal and are brought to a stop at the edge. The canal is filled with a noisome brown liquid which flows and swirls down the tower with slurping, sucking sounds. Frodo and Sam hesitate, repulsed by the smell, but the orcs are catching up with them.
Nothing else for it, Sam.
They jump in and start swimming. The orcs stand on the edge of the canal, screaming with delight, waving to the hobbits as they are swept away. The orcs are soon out of sight. The great tower soars up of formations of lava rock, which are shaped like angry waves breaking against its mighty structure that looms above them. They try to hang on to the ironwork, but are dragged inside into a large, dark, circular cavern. There, the gluttonous waters converge in a huge, frothing whirlpool. They can barely keep afloat. They notice a thin, silvery wire that hangs down from the darkness above. Sam struggles towards it, but it keeps eluding him. It flips across in front of Frodo and he seizes it, hauling himself up. Then he swings on it until he passes over Sam, who grabs his feet. To their surprise, they find themselves ascending. They clutch the tough, thin cord, burning their hands as they are drawn up into the darkness above and through a rough opening into an upper cavern. Upper cavern day. They let go of the strand and drop gratefully onto solid ground, wet and exhausted. Vapors rise up through the hole. They cough and choke. Around them, they can just make out rotting bones and skeletons.
Who pulled us up, do you think? Friend or foe?
I doubt if we have a friend in this place.
They have drawn their swords. They look around anxiously. Something moves above them. They look up. On the same strand, a huge spider, the Shelob, is lowering itself towards them. The spider alights and scuttles at them. The thrust-out head presents two great clusters of eyes and under them a pointed jaw. The body is a vast, bloated bag, swaying and sagging between hairy legs. Hope no one is afraid of spiders. The Shelob is black except for the underbelly, which is pale and luminous. Sam, unable to talk, is tugging at Frodo's arm.
No, you, Sam, stand and fight.
Frodo promptly charges the Shelob, which is now only a few feet away. Frodo lets out a great cry. He makes a sudden lunge and plunges Sting into one of the clusters of eyes. The spider shudders and draws back convulsively. Frodo, perhaps encouraged by this or made lightheaded by privation and terror, recklessly rushes forward. Its head is raised now and out of Frodo's range, but he slashes at one of the legs and manages to sever it. He turns to Sam for approval.
I shall slay it, Sam. I am the Lord of the Ring. Or you, Galadriel.
Frodo is in a state of elation. He slashes vainly at the Shelob's head, which is well out of range. The spider looks balefully down at the tiny figure confronting it. Mucus oozes from the wounded eye, forming into huge tears, giving it a doleful look. If you say so.
So does it feel bad for Shelob?
Yeah. No, it just looks like Bob Dole.
No. That's worse.
He's weeping for the producer in charge of the budget.
With a sudden, unexpected moment, it cuts off Frodo's proud boasts. His head dips down towards him, and a narrow tongue with a sharp point stabs out, accurately stinging Frodo in the neck. The sting seems to freeze him in that posture for a long moment. Sam lets out a cry of agony and rage.
Sons of bitches, bumpkisses!
Without taking thought, he charges the Shelob, snatching up Sting from where it fell. He springs under the arches of its legs and slashes at the sagging underbelly. The hide is thick and pitted, and although the blade cuts deep, no blood spills. The Shelob feels the pain. It arches up from the sword, then sinks down as if to crush Sam. Sam holds Sting high above his head, and as the belly descends, the blade goes in under its own weight. A green liquid spurts and froths from the wound. The harder it presses down, the deeper plunges the blade. Sam is forced to his knees and then onto his back, and still he holds Sting, which is now sunk in up to the hilt. Just as he is being crushed to death, the Shelob makes a hissing sound, shudders, and lifts up her belly. The Shelob retreats, withdrawing into a dark hole in the wall of the cavern, leaving a trail of green-yellow slime. Sam crawls over to where Frodo lies.
Master! Master!
Sam lays his head on his master's face and then on his breast and finds no stirring of life. He rubs Frodo's hand.
Mr. Frodo, don't leave me here alone!
Sam becomes angry and jumps up, smiting the air with Sting, shouting incoherent threats at the Shelob, which has fled into the dark recesses of the cave.
All this way for nothing! I can't leave you and I can't take you. And what happens if the enemy finds you with that thing on you? Well, that's the end of all of us then, the Shire and everything. There's only one thing for it, Mr. Frodo. We came to do a job. Try and finish it.
Very gently, he undoes the clasp of the chain around Frodo's neck and pulls the ring from under his tunic. He kisses Frodo's forehead and rises up, putting the chain about his own neck.
So I'm the last. Goodbye, Mr. Frodo, sir. Forgive me, but I'll take Sting too.
Sam slips into the shadows and looks up. Down the circular wall come a band of orcs. They quickly spot Frodo and point in great excitement. They stand over Frodo, arguing. One of them makes a search of the body, and Sam winces at the clawed figures exploring Frodo's flesh. Then one of them slashes his own wrist. A dark maw of blood gushes out and into Frodo's mouth. Frodo chokes and stirs and groans.
I should have guessed. A spider's bite. It only stuns its prey. Now what shall I do now?
The orcs lift Frodo onto their shoulders and climb back up the way they came.
Now what? Do I go on alone or try to help the master? My job is to serve the ring bearer, but Sam, you're the ring bearer now.
He struggles with the problem for a moment, then his heart triumphs over his head, and he hurries to the steps and stealthily follows the orcs. The ascending steps lead up to a heavy iron grill which covers a hole in the roof. The orcs carrying Frodo pass through, and the grill is swung back into place with clanging finality. Sam blinks up through the bars in the blackest despair. He sinks down on a step. Cold and weary, his body begins to shiver, and a few stray sobs work their way up too. The Pelennor fields, day. Gandalf and Pippin, mounted on Shadowfax, gallop across a broken plain, scarred by years of battle, ahead of the great gates of Minas Tirith.
Look, Pippin, there stands Minas Tirith, and there rides the Nazgul. Faster, Shadowfax, faster!
He points out the Nazgul, who was but a distant speck, trailing a long plume of dust, and also heading for the gates. Chamber above the gates. The captain of the gate sees Gandalf approaching through a slit in the wall. He turns towards a figure slouched on a bench in the darkness of the small chamber. The figure is regally dressed. A crown hangs from his waist, and in his hand is a sword. His look is crazed, his eyes swollen from much crying.
Lord Denethor. Oh, I'm sorry.
He is very eager to speak. The chamber is an armory, and on the walls are weapons which glint in the candlelight. The many points of the swords and spears converge menacingly over the figure's head.
Lord Denethor, it is not your son Boromir. I fear it is but Gandalf.
Gates of Minas Tirith. Shadowfax comes hurling to a halt in front of the gates. Soldiers cheer from the walls.
Gandalf has come. The White Rider has come.
The guards climb into a treadmill device that opens the gate, but Denethor appears from the gatehouse and waves them away. He peers at Gandalf through the crack which has opened in the gates.
Open the gates, the Nazgul rides.
The Nazgul's always with us, but dark indeed is the hour if you have come.
Hail, Lord of Gondor, Steward of Minas Tirith, I bring glad tidings. Even now the riders of Rohan gallop to your aid.
Some of the guards cheer at the news, but Denethor's manner subdues them. His mad eye fixes Gandalf through the crack.
Then Theoden, you old fool, gallops to his death. Wizard, you stole my son. Give him back.
That I cannot.
Then he is dead.
Lord Denethor, this halfling witnessed brave Boromir's glorious death. Pippin, speak up.
Well, we were on this raft.
Gandalf glares at Pippin and jabs him with his finger. Pippin understands and changes tack.
Yes. I stood beside the mighty warrior as he blew a horn, but no help came, only more orcs.
More! Tell more!
Let me know if it's too much.
Open the gates and you shall hear everything.
All cheap tricks have opened the gates. Let the White Rider and the halfling pass.
I think there was a troll in the Hobbit movies that had the exact same voice he's doing right now.
Could have been same actor.
The guards jump onto the treadmill and get a good workout in. The gates begin to winch open slowly. The Nazgul is drawn closer and comes to a halt. The great cloud of dust behind him begins to settle. Nazgul is mounted on a steed which seems to have no skin. Its live, raw, bleeding flesh is exposed. Under the Nazgul's firm control, the horse quivers, neighs, and snorts in agony.
Come not between the Nazgul and its prey, you guys. Your flesh shall be devoured, and your mind shriveled and left naked to the lidless eye.
The long trail of dust is settling behind the Nazgul. It reveals hundreds of mounted orcs who have been hiding with it. The orcs charge forward, howling and screaming, galloping madly towards the open gates. Inside the gates, Shadowfax, carrying Gandalf and Pippin, bolt past the gate into a large square. The square is surrounded by a great wall of iron and stone in which there are other doors, which open onto the different parts of the city. The guards are desperately turning the treadmill to close the heavy gates, which slowly start to swing back into place. But orc horsemen come crashing through the gates. Orc horses run berserk across the square. Orcs throw themselves onto the treadmill, trying to reverse its direction and open the gates again. They seem to be succeeding. The gate stops moving. The guards struggle desperately to keep it turning their way. Gandalf rides up on Shadowfax, his sword drawn. Shadowfax rears up and beats the treadmill with his hooves. Orcs are dislodged and his weight helps the treadmill start turning again. Once again, the gates begin to close. Finally, the gates are shut with a clang. On the battlements above the gates, Denethor is slouched against a parapet, oblivious to the struggle below. Pippin stands by his side. Below Denethor is a great square, its tumult and confusion the background to his anguished face. He glares down at Pippin.
More! Tell me more!
Pippin kneels and offers his sword to Denethor.
Lord Denethor, accept the modest services of the halfling of the Shire.
Denethor takes the sword.
I accept.
Denethor throws the sword over the battlements.
But not your sword! Only your tongue and memory of Boromir.
Ryan Johnson takes notes. Gandalf, hot with battle, followed by the captains of Minas Tirith, ascends to the battlements.
Lord Denethor, the first circle of the city is burning.
What are your commands, Lord and Steward? The men are flying from the walls and leave them unmanned.
Pippin looks out over the battlements towards Mordor and sees upon the plain endless phalanges of orcs and trolls advancing, to the beat of drums and screech of trumpets. Not very good trumpeters.
Wait, phalanxes?
That's what he meant. He wrote phalanges.
Phalanges. Regina Phalanges.
Yeah, I think he meant phalanx.
That is actually the correct plural of the word.
What? Yeah.
Okay. Denethor's gaze is fixed upon the burning wall.
Go fight and burn, for burn we must. Gandalf, your hope is to rule in my stead.
No, Denethor, my hope is that all worthy things outlast this doom and grow fair and bear fruit and flower again in days to come.
Gandalf turns to the captains.
Each one to your place. What more can I hope or ask? And I shall be where I'm most needed.
Denethor smiles and begins to convulse rhythmically as though struck by invisible blows. Behind them, a huge battering ram is repeatedly pounding at the wall. Denethor jerks and winces each time the wall is struck. Pippin watches him anxiously. The battering ram pounds and a breach is forced in the wall. Howling orcs swarm over the rubble. The populace and the soldiers flee in terror. The tower, day gloom. Sam crouches on the same step behind the grill. He holds the ring in his hand and regards it with a mixture of revulsion and fascination. The grill swings open. 5 orcs begin to descend. Sam's hands tremble as he starts to put the ring on his finger. A blinding light erupts all around him. The orcs approach Sam and contort in agony. Their bodies convulse. They stagger off the steps, plunging onto the rocks below. A dense cacophony assaults Sam's ears. He forces himself up the steps and through the open grill. As he approaches them, the guards begin to convulse and look at him blindly. One seems to be rushing at Sam, but hurtles past him and crashes into the rough surface wall. Another throws himself on the ground at Sam's feet and beats his own face again and again on the flagstones. Sam stumbles over the orc and falls to the ground, hitting his elbows on the flagstones. Sam makes out the inside of the tower rising above him. Leading off from the ramp are arches and passageways which open into chambers and areas of darkness. Upon the ramp, orcs come and go busily. The atmosphere is that of an anthill preparing for war. Sam's effect is startling. Orcs close to him feel a convulsive agony, as though their nervous systems were scalded. Those further off feel pain and discomfort. They all look in his direction, but their gaze is blank. They are like iron fillings and Sam the magnet. Each movement of Sam sends repercussions rippling into the corporate body of the frenzied orcs. Sam looks desperately for Frodo, but he is nowhere to be seen. The light above draws his gaze, and as he regards it, it slowly becomes the eye. Sam moans with terror. A deep voice echoes to his head over the barrage of sounds. One ring to rule them all. In a final effort of will, Sam throws himself behind a heap of orc shields and wrenches off the ring. His face drains of blood, and he loses consciousness. The tower darkens. Inner circle of walls, Minas Tirith. Denethor and Pippin stroll along the top of the wall on a leisurely promenade. Pippin is dressed as a court jester with cap and bells. The clothes do not fit too well and are blood-stained and full of arrow holes, suggesting the fate of the predecessor. Jokes weren't that funny, apparently. Men and women are engaged in furious combat, repelling the orcs who are scaling the walls with ladders. Beyond the inner circle is the outer wall with a great breach in it. The houses and the cultivated land between the two walls is laid in ruin and flame. Orcs are swarming everywhere. The inner city is now under siege. Globules of fire rain onto the houses. Many fires are blazing. Denethor's arm is around the hobbit's shoulder in a fatherly grasp.
Honest Lord Denethor, the hobbit songs are not fit for these times. We sing of nothing more terrible than thunder and rain. These holes?
Pippin indicates his costume. Denethor laughs.
Wah, 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 wah. My poor jester. He got a few stray arrows fighting at me side. But that was before I heard the blast of
He's your son.
Your son.
That sword I care so dearly for was before I heard the blast of Boromir's horn drifting on the wind. That was when I still believed in slaying. Now I believe in being slain. Now tell me of Boromir. Did he fare well with Lady Galadriel?
Pippin is about to tell a lie, but he cannot.
Yes. No. I fear it was a halfling that she chose, huh?
Denethor breaks into mad laughter, which is full of despair. Gandalf is galloping towards a point where orcs with flaming torches are scaling the wall. Soldiers flee, their clothes on fire. The orcs take mouthfuls from drinking skins and spurt the liquid out over the torches, and from the mouths of some of the orcs, spurting flames issue. Gandalf leaps from Shadowfax and engages the flame-spitting orcs, topping many from the wall. Shadowfax rears kicks and neighs at the orcs. The soldiers are encouraged and rally to Gandalf's aid. Denethor and Pippin stroll along the wall towards Gandalf. Gandalf is leaning against the battlements in a state of utter exhaustion. The orcs have been repulsed. He looks like a frail and beaten old man. He hears Pippin's voice and Denethor's demented laughter. With an effort, he pulls himself together. Denethor is waving a finger at him.
So the One Ring has been found.
Pippin looks guiltily at Gandalf.
To send it with a witless offering into the hands of the enemy yourself, as you have done, that is madness. To Boromir it should have been entrusted.
Is there hope for Frodo?
Never there was much, Pippin, just a fool's hope, and you, Denethor, tempt me not with madness. Madness would be a great comfort to me. Boromir died well, be content.
Ah, a cock crows! What omen is that?
Beyond this world of gloom, the sun is rising.
They scan the distant horizon, looking for hope, and instead of the cock crowing, a distant horn is heard. Gandalf turns to look across the Pelennor fields.
The riders of Rohan!
A great wave of the riders of Rohan gallops across the plain, Theoden at their head. The rider next to Theoden is blowing a long, melodious line on his horn. Eomer is leading another host of riders. A horn cries out in answer to the other. The horn next to Theoden signals again, and all the riders break from a fast gallop into a synchronized parade-like canter. Their lances are at the ready, swords are drawn, their armor glitters. From a distance, they present thousands of points of light, shimmering and moving. They ride out at a regular, if not sinister canter, towards the breach in the outer walls of Minas Tirith. High on the battlements, Gandalf stands, waving his sword. Gandalf.
Men of Minas Tirith, to the breach.
He jumps over the battlements onto an orc, scaling a ladder. His feet crash through the rungs and he plunges into the orcs. He directs the fall of the two poles of the ladder onto the terrified orcs. Sword in hand, he flings himself at them. The soldiers, dazzled by his example and encouraged by the arrival of the riders of Rohan, fling themselves after him with renewed vigor and swarm down upon the orcs. Cries of joy run like waves across the city. The doors which give onto the great square of Minas Tirith are flung open. The people of Minas Tirith flood the square. The main gate is open. The people pour out, exalted, lightheaded from their rigorous and privations of the long siege. Civilians and women, as well as soldiers, swell the ranks, bearing any kind of weapon that comes to hand. They are ragged and dirty. The fires have blackened their faces. The soldiers have not shaved for days, even though it's been going for about 15 minutes. Many of them are weak from lack of food. It is an undisciplined rabble that empties out of the garrison city onto the Pelennor field. The orcs flee before this crazy onslaught. Theoden and his men charge the breach. Orcs are pouring out of the breach, driven back by Gandalf and his followers. Theoden presses them back into a solid wall of quarreling, swarming, hysterical orcs. Meanwhile, Eomer's company sweeps at a wide arc, cutting a path through orc encampments and then driving in towards the breach from another angle. Eomer uses the open spaces to keep up his pace, turning and charging in zigzags. Theoden's men have now dismounted and turned their horses so that their rears face into the orcs. Only Theoden and his captains remain mounted, directing their troops. From inside the wall of orcs, mounted Uruks emerge. The king hurls his sword at the Uruk rider. The sword whirls through the air and flies into the Uruk. He falls to the ground but rises again, the sword sticking out of his chest. The wail of the Uruk is answered and echoed with increasing hysterical intensity by swarming bands of orcs and trolls deployed all over the Pelennor fields. Responding to the cry, the Nazgul appears, galloping madly across the plain on his skinned horse. Armed with a quivering lance, the Nazgul charges towards the rear of the wall of orcs, emitting a terrifying vibrato wail. The orcs open up and he thunders between them, galloping directly at Theoden. At the sudden apparition of the Nazgul, the horses of the riders of Rohan go berserk. They rear and bolt away. Among the riders there is confusion and panic. Theoden bravely spurs his horse towards the Nazgul. His sword is gone. He draws a pathetically small dagger which he waves at his foe. The Nazgul's lance pierces Theoden's chest and passes through his back. He is jousted to the ground, landing on his feet. Grasping the long lance, he pivots around, swinging the end of the lance into the hind legs of the Nazgul's horse. The horse stumbles and Nazgul is thrown to the ground. He gets to his feet and, drawing his sword, moves toward Theoden's body, which is now sprawled out on the ground, the great lance impaled in his chest. One of the riders spurs his horse up to Theoden. Merry is sitting before him on the saddle. The Nazgul jeers and wails. The horse rears in fear. The rider jumps up to the ground while Merry topples off. The rider confronts the Nazgul, who advances menacingly. The rider calls out in a voice trembling with emotion. Merry is terrified, but manages to draw his blade.
Be gone, thou Lord of Carrion. Leave the dead in peace.
The rider charges the Nazgul. The Nazgul strikes a mighty blow. The sword arm of the rider drops in agony. Merry jumps recklessly at the Nazgul, who slashes at him with his sword. Merry gets under the blow, which just catches his thigh, cutting deep. Merry is right up against the Nazgul and thrusts his dagger into the Nazgul's knee in a joint in his armor. Meanwhile, the rider, dropping his sword, catches it with the other hand and drives it at the Nazgul, lunging the sword into him. The Nazgul shudders with convulsions. He crashes to the ground, breaking into the components of his empty armor, from which dark fumes rise. The Nazgul's horse has ridden from the ground and gallops in berserk circles. It comes up to the fuming remnants of the Nazgul, picks up the empty helmet in its mouth, and heads off towards Mordor. Merry and the rider have fallen to the ground, lifeless. Theoden is dying. Above him stands the horn-bearer, blowing a plaintive dirge. Merry, wounded and dazed, looks across at the rider, his companion. The face is deadly white, the eyes are glazed. The rider's helmet is dislodged and locks of hair show through. Merry crawls over to the rider and removes the helmet. Long blonde hair cascades out. It is Eowyn, daughter of Theoden.
Oh, hi, Eowyn. I didn't know it was you. I should have guessed.
Yeah, I feel like the accent gave it away. Merry sobs and cries. His head sways as if he's about to faint. The wound on his thigh darkens. He begins to undress her cold, stiff body, removing the thick leather armor. Her beautiful body is revealed. A terrible disfigures her arm. The riders cry out in wonder and despair at the sight of Eowyn.
It is our lady, Eowyn. She rode in disguise with the hero halfling.
Merry's consciousness fades.
See to the lady.
A rider begins to clean Merry's darkening wound, but the other riders are in too much awe to approach Eowyn. Really helpful there, guys. The last glimmer of life drains out of Theoden. The hornblower blows the same plaintive dirge. Gandalf, followed by Denethor and Pippin, walks into the circle of riders. Denethor drags the crown behind him, hanging on a leash from his belt. Above the horn call, Denethor's crazy ranting is heard.
Oh, God, he's not dead yet. Our blood is rotten, and we fall into a deeper dream of terror. The Dark Lord will snatch our bodies, and we shall linger at the edge of life and become with his accursed wraiths. Gandalf, surely you can heal us of the Black Shadow.
He lies down beside Theoden and grotesquely goes through the motions of dying, although he has suffered no wound. Merry's eyes half open. He sees Pippin and he smiles. He talks as if in a daze. I think he's going for there.
In a dance.
Oh, hi, Pippin. I'm a hero.
Pippin?
You're muted, Langley.
I think you're muted, Langley. Sorry.
Thank you for that. Duh. Stupid. Okay. Sorry. Okay. And I am a jester, Merry.
Heroes and jesters are equal in the Shire, aren't they? We shouldn't forget the dear old Shire.
Outside the gates of Minas Tirith and Pelennor Fields, orc trumpeteers precede the implacable onslaught, writhing frantically to squeeze out every ounce of breath into each trumpet blast. An orc trumpeter is struck by arrows. Blood gushes out of the trumpet and rains upon the orcs.
What?
Yeah. This whips them into a lustful frenzy. They break into a run. The children, the old, and the infirm are on the walls, hurtling down pieces of the battlement onto the orcs. Through this throng of humanity, Gandalf wades, trying to organize the men into a form of phalanx to resist the onslaught and to retreat in an orderly way. Éomer gallops into the circle of horsemen. He leaps from his mount and lands at Theoden's side.
Father.
Denethor is writhing on the ground, ranting crazily.
My son! The Dark Lord took him, and soon he will take us all, pluck us from these vain efforts of war.
Death! All this death is tearing me apart! Pippin, how is death in the Shire? I can't remember.
Death in the Shire? The hobbits die? Yes. Remember Sam's great uncle? He became overripe and fell out from being men. into fireside stories. Hail Eamor, king of Moab.
After Theoden dies, Éomer leaps onto his horse. His tears give way to anger as he acknowledges the homage of the riders. Gandalf is at the gates organizing the retreat. He is perplexed by the sight of the snake. Éomer is standing. It didn't mention a snake before. Sure, there's a snake now. Okay. Éomer is standing on his saddle, watching the snake move through the orc encampments and his own troops responding to it with dismay.
Before we drown in a sea of orcs, let the riders of Rohan slay this monster snake and avenge the death of our king.
The orcs pile up in front of the riders and press in from the side. The riders hack and swashbuckle away through, their progress growing ever slower. Some of the riders are forced to dismount, and they use their horses to kick at the enemy. Suddenly, the snake disintegrates. It breaks up into sections, each part living and moving. The enormous head collapses, and out of it breaks a great white banner with a tree embossed on it. The snake was made of warriors, their shields painted and held over their heads, forming the stripes and shape of a snake. Thanks for taking paragraphs to describe how soldiers march. Really important use of your space there, Boorman. As the snake disintegrates, the warriors run cheering to Éomer's side. Éomer can scarcely believe his eyes. Despair becomes elation. The orcs are forced to turn from the riders as they are attacked from behind.
No hope was our last hope.
The tower. Sam awakes under the shields to see orc feet trampling all around him. They turn over shields and throw them to one side. Sam takes the ring again and prepares to put it on. A shield is dislodged and Sam is revealed, pointing the ring at the orc standing above him. The orc convulses and lashes out his arms, accidentally hitting a companion in the face. A fight starts, vicious and noisy. Others join in or try to separate the protagonists. Sam, taking advantage of the distraction, crawls away between the legs of a fighting orc. All around and below, he can see orcs searching, violently tearing at sacks, smashing open anything that might conceal a hobbit. As he goes up, Sam sees a figure cloaked and hooded who is walking urgently down the ramp towards the important arch. Two orcs follow him, one carrying the helmet which belonged to the slain Nazgul.
Gandalf!
The figure stands in front of the important arch. The guard is unlocking the door. Elated, Sam walks out from beneath the shield and up to the figure. Sam's face falls when he catches a glimpse of his face. He realizes he is standing in the midst of orcs. He falls to the ground. He has no resort but to scuttle under the cloak. The door is flung open. The figure enters. The figure walks into the chamber. It is windowless and rigged with torture devices. Sam crawls out from beneath the trailing cloak and squeezes himself into a corner. He sees Frodo lying on a slab, naked. An orc is fitting over his head the Nazgul's helmet. They are rusty clamps, and he slows and with difficulty screws these down until they bite into Frodo's cheeks and forehead, holding his eyes wide open. Frodo moans and arches his back from the pain. The figure is given Frodo's clothes by the other orc. He searches through them, but obviously does not find what he is looking for. Without a word, he leaves, Frodo's clothes over his arm. An orc remains behind to guard Frodo. He bends over to examine Frodo's face. Using all his strength, he gives the clamps an extra turn. Pelennor Fields. The back of a great orc obstructs the view. An axe blade cleaves the orc asunder. The two halves splay open, revealing Gimli. An orc throws himself into the two halves of the cloven orc, but is shot dead by an arrow released by Legolas. Between Legolas and Gimli comes Aragorn, wielding the sword that was broken in either hand. Above him, on the great white banner, ripples the white tree of Elendil. Éomer jumps up from his horse, hands outstretched to embrace Aragorn, who is followed by a strange army. They are a bizarre collection, dwarves wielding axes, tree elf bowmen dressed in leaves and feathers, tall, lean rangers with two-handed swords, but most startling of all, the risen dead, dressed in bleached white clothing, their faces blanched, their hair silver. Beyond fear, they pitch themselves at the orcs, smiling radiantly. Aragorn bends his knee before Éomer, who wears the crown of Rohan.
You come none too soon, my friend. Much loss and sorrow has befallen us.
Let us avenge all sorrow before we speak of it. To Minas Tirith!
From the walls, the children and elders cheer wildly.
Aragorn!
Aragorn! The mighty danger is
So hot!
Battle weary but radiant, Aragorn enters the circle where lie the dying and the dead.
We meet, Aragorn, beneath the banner of your ancestors.
Beyond all hope, you have returned to us in our need.
Pippin comes up to them, still attired as a jester, his eyes swollen with tears.
Hello, friends of the fellowship, our Gandalf. Remember how he fell into the bottomless pit and that great light came up? Well, all those fireworks he kept hidden in his cloak, they exploded, and we met him again. He was all frizzled.
Pippin takes Aragorn's hand and pulls him towards Merry.
Some good stonework there, but also some less than good.
No trees, no garden, no birds.
Aragorn stands over Merry.
The black shadow is upon him.
Merry, wake up!
Merry is still as death. Aragorn embraces Merry tightly and kisses him on his brow. He holds him for a long moment.
Wake up, I say, it is Aragorn!
Which means so much.
Hi, Aragorn.
Merry stirs. Pippin cries out joyfully. Faint, delirious words come from Denethor, who's still alive somehow.
The hands of a healer are the hands of a king.
From the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring.
I'm hungry. Aragorn, how?
There is no time for travelers' tales.
Aragorn rises while Pippin helps Merry to his feet. The others are amazed and awed. Aragorn looks down to Denethor.
The Lord Denethor, he hasn't been himself lately.
Lord Denethor, Boromir is my blood brother.
Aragorn goes to embrace him. Denethor has a dagger in his hand. Unseen by all, he points his dagger at his own heart. Aragorn embraces him, and in doing so, his chest pushes the dagger into Denethor's breast. Sure. Aragorn rises and quickly pulls out the blade, but too late. Gandalf takes Denethor in his arms.
His despair was too strong, even for the power that has risen in you, Aragorn.
Aragorn sees the lifeless body of Éowyn. He takes her in his arms. Aragorn summons all his strength and grasps Éowyn's body tightly to his. The onlookers are deadly silent. Éowyn does not stir. Aragorn spreads out her arms and covers her with his body. He presses his palms in her palms, his legs on her. Aza, you may not want to do all these motions. That's not how secret works.
Yeah.
After a moment, she moans and her body writhes, trapped under Aragorn's great weight. When he feels her stir, he rises, lifting her with him, and folding her in his arms, pressing her mouth and body to his. Aragorn releases his mouth and she sucks in a breath, gasping. He looks at her face, enraptured by her pale beauty. Aragorn whispers to her in a low voice.
My breath I give you, Lady Éowyn. My life I give you. By the ache of exile, I draw out your ache. By the long nights I have lain alone, I call you back to me.
She stirs. Her eyes flutter open for a second, but she fades again. Aragorn grasps her and kisses her with passion and intensity. Gandalf dips the banner, that sounds like a euphemism, now tightly folded into the blood of Denethor. The blood soaks into the white cloth. Éowyn floats out of her deep coma and looks into Aragorn's sad, loving eyes. Her face flushes with color as the grayness fades. She smiles. They look into each other's eyes with love.
The hands of the healer are the hands of the king. The king has returned to Gondor.
Wild cheers break out. From the walls, the children and the elders burst into a chant.
I think that was sexual harassment.
I don't know what just happened.
That was weird.
I feel dirty.
Yay!
Cover my eyes, mommy.
That was weird in the England's coronation. Gandalf can be heard.
From the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadow shall spring.
The sword! Look! Look!
Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crown once again shall be king.
And Gandalf finally found a rhyme. Yay! The two broken ends of Aragorn's sword are glowing with incandescence. The makeshift handle of one half is burning to ashes, while the ground into which the other half is plunged is scorched and smoldering. We can afford this, but not the burning pyre of Denethor, apparently. All eyes turn upon it. Aragorn kneels by the sword. Aragorn lifts the two halves of the sword above his head, bringing the incandescent parts together, and immediately they fuse.
I have the power!
The elders chant.
Renewed shall be the sword that was broken. The crown again shall be king.
Hail king! Hail queen!
I think the children have some
Oh,
problems.
hi, Aragorn King.
Wait, where is Frodo? What of Frodo?
Interior torture chamber. Sam has climbed up on a stretching back at his
So smooth.
Smash cut.
Seamless.
It's like that sitcom cut of, he would never be in a torture chamber.
Peter Griffin.
Meanwhile, in the
The
torture
gang gets caught in
chamber.
the torture chamber.
This is worse than that time we got tortured by orcs. Sam has climbed up on a stretching rack that is fixed to one wall. He leaps down from it, Sting held out in front of him like a gull diving for a heron. The guard is turned facing Frodo and Sting drives down into his back. Sam lands with the sword between his legs and his feet on the guard's shoulder. The orc turns his head and looks up at Sam with an expression of surprise and sinks down dead. Sam pulls out the blade and goes to Frodo, who is still in a swoon. He examines the helmet with distaste and begins to unscrew the clamps, which are on the point of perforating the skin. The helmet comes loose and he throws it to one side. Frodo stirs. Sam strokes his forehead and calls to him.
Master Frodo, it's me. It's your dude, Sam. Master, please, it's Sam. You remember Sam Gamgee, the Shire, Mr. Bilbo, Merry, Pippin, Gandalf, Galadriel.
The ring for the master, for Sauron.
Don't let them make you one of them, Mr. Frodo.
And Sam's tears begin to flow. He bends down and takes Frodo in his arms. This, more than any words or devices, except apparently Galadriel, brings Frodo to himself again. He blinks.
Is that you, Sam? Is it really you? Not another trick?
No, Master, it's just Sam.
I've been on a terrible journey. They've broken something inside of me, Sam, that will never be mended.
Frodo limps again and
All
Sam's
your
arms.
virginity.
We took that a long time ago, Sam, a long time ago.
Clearly.
Frodo falls limp again in Sam's arm and swoons away. Sam strokes his brow and pulls out his water bottle. He puts it to Frodo's lips. He comes and drinks a little, then falls asleep, this time more peacefully, lying in Sam's arms. Sam looks nervously at the door and manages to get hold of Sting in his free hand. Outer walls of Minas Tirith. Dominating the outer wall is the regal figure of Aragorn, now resplendent in the red and silver cloak of the king. Further along the wall, Gandalf surveys the Pelennor fields as the never-ending orc hordes march down from the Gates of Mordor. At his sides are Merry and Pippin. They are watching Aragorn with open admiration.
Who would have thought that our nice old ranger would turn out to be a king? What a story.
The Dark Lord himself would tremble if he could see him now.
If Sauron could see the mighty Aragorn, he would surely believe he bore the ring of power. Now he addresses the hob. I'm reading my stage directions.
I feel better now.
To gain time for Frodo, if time is what he needs. Power! Sauron weighs all things to a nicety in the scales of his malice, but the only measure he knows is desire. Desire for power. We shall be the bait. Let folly be our cloak.
Torture chamber, supported by Sam. Frodo is getting dressed in the clothes which belong to the dead orc who lies naked on the floor. Frodo is still very pale and shaky.
Was it good for you?
It was so good.
Are you
Thank you
feeling
so
more
much.
yourself now, Master?
Well, I'm not feeling like somebody else anymore.
Out of habit, his hand drifts to his chest. He feels for the ring. It is gone. A deep, agonized moan escapes him. Or Tarzan, yell whatever.
They're taking everything, Sam. Everything.
Not everything, Master Frodo. I took that particular thing and kept it safe. It's around my neck now, and a terrible burden it is.
My virginity's around your neck and it's a burden? You've got it? You've got it here?
Sam nods and fumbles with his tunic, pulling out the ring. Frodo's face
I
lights
have
up with
got
joy.
it right here.
But when he sees the ring, his expression changes to one of lust and avarice.
Give it to me, you thief. It's mine.
All right, Master, but be careful. It's got very powerful in here and heavy to bear.
Then Frodo recovers and embraces Sam.
Oh, Sam, what have I said? Forgive me.
I understand, you little bastard. That's all right, Master. I have to get out of here. And I think that little fella is our only hope.
He points sheepishly at the ring, which is back on Frodo's neck. Frodo looks up at Sam and nods agreement. The gates of Minas Tirith. The gates are open, and from them comes a magnificent spectacle. Aragorn, King of Gondor, strides forth, sword held high, head bearing the crown, armor shimmering. By his side is his queen Éowyn, her golden hair flowing, silver armor following the contours of her body and breasts. Then come Gimli, Legolas, Gandalf, Merry, and Pippin, all in fine regalia, followed by the greatest warriors of Gondor, and also tree elves, dwarves, and the risen dead. The gates close behind the chosen party. Cheers ring from the battlements. In front, the orcs are building up and challenging Aragorn's advance. Éomer and his riders circled the group, galloping round and around, creating a protective ring, a mobile no man's land. The strange and beautiful group advances through the sea of orcs, walking straight for Mordor. The door of the torture chamber opens and 2 orcs enter. They tower over the hobbits. Sam and Frodo swing their swords and crack them across the shins. The orcs double up, and as they do, the hobbits dash out of the door. They close and bolt it. They start to work their way down, keeping to the inside shadows, but they are quickly spotted. Hundreds of orcs on the floor of the tower look up excitedly, and some start up the ramp. The hobbits are trapped. Their pursuers close up from behind.
Quick, the ring!
Frodo fumbles forward and loses his footing in doing so. He slides down into a stalactite which hangs from the underside of the ramp. Sam leans over the ramp, attempting to grasp Frodo. Frodo can see his hands distorted and enlarged to the transparent stalactite. The ring looks enormous.
Master, put it on!
Frodo attempts to slip on the ring, but he slowly slides down, his hands clawing into the slimy smooth rock. Finally, he falls. He is caught by the orcs below. They hoist Frodo above their heads in triumph and run down the ramp onto the open floor. Sam, clutching to save Frodo, loses his balance and falls. The Gates of Mordor. The chosen group stands at an arrow's pitch from the enormous gates of Mordor, shaped like open jaws. An endless wall winds away to the horizon in either direction. All around the chosen, orcs stand waiting, silent. Gandalf walks to Aragorn's side and breaks the silence. His voice booms out towards the gates.
The King of Gondor has returned. King Aragorn, Aravelendil, Aragorn the Arrogant, demands that Sauron come forth and atone for his sins.
Silence reigns. Then the gates hinge open without a sound. Noiselessly, 2 hideous black horses with flames burning in the sockets of their eyes and nostrils draw out a black chariot, upon which is the great emblem of the evil eye. A figure descends from the chariot. A gasp of disbelief goes up. The figure is the spitting image of Gandalf. His cloak is white, but it shimmers with threads of many colors. A cobra is coiled around his staff.
Like him? Yet.
Not like him.
Gandalf and the figure are face to face, glaring into each other's eyes.
Oi, hey, I am the mouth of Sauron, right?
Saruman, don't you remember your name? Is such the power of the Dark Lord over you? We meet again, Saruman of many colors.
Yeah, of many colors. Yeah, and many powers, babe.
Darmon in the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yes.
Very, very glad that we got Bob Hoskins in this movie at the last minute.
Amazing.
As he talks, Saruman sways his staff hypnotically. The cobra rears ready to strike. All eyes are fixed upon the snake. It seems as though it will strike at Gandalf, but instead it strikes Saruman, sinking its fangs into his leg under the cloak. The snake falls to the ground, writhing in the dust. and in a compulsive spasm it dies. Saruman laughs. Gandalf points at the snake.
Saruman, I am the snake about to strike.
Oh, all right, all right. I am the staff that crushes the snake.
I'm the fire that burns the staff to ashes.
Ooh. I am cloudburst that quenches the fire.
I am the well that traps the water. Yeah.
So Boorman wrote in a rock, paper, scissors contest.
It's Sandman and the devil right here.
Yeah.
I am just words, you old fool.
But words are a part of everything, as water, seeds, and blood. Saruman, I say to you, checkmate. King has returned.
Yeah. It takes more to make a king than armor and elvish polish and a rabble such as this.
Aragorn has remained aloof throughout, probably just confused. As Saruman's words, he pivots slightly, his greatsword sending a blinding glint into Saruman's eyes. Saruman squints and averts his face.
Aragorn the king wields a power which Sauron has lost and has not found.
I spit on your ringer.
He spits towards Aragorn. Wormtongue jumps out of the chariot, laughing vindictively. He bears an effigy dressed in Frodo's clothes. Its base is a spiked pole which he thrusts into the ground. The chosen are aghast. They cry out, unable to conceal their anguish.
Silence!
All right, I see he was dear to you. Was his errand one that you hoped would not fail?
Frodo is dead. Our little spy in the vast and terrible land of Mordor.
Yeah, that little brat from the rat hole of the fire.
The tower. A teeming throng of orcs is turned towards a central point where Frodo should be, but is not. Instead, the center is like a nest of angry serpents. He really liked snakes in the last third of this for some reason. The orcs smash against each other, tear, rent, and scratch, a howling holocaust of misery. To one side, under the ramp, stalagmites jut upwards. He had just learned the difference, apparently. Orcs that have fallen from the ramp are impaled at their angry points. Sam is impaled on one of them as a result of his fall. But surprisingly, his eyes open slowly and a grin comes on his face. He looks across at the orcs.
He did it! He put it on!
Sam slides down from the stalagmite, revealing that its point has been truncated. He had been balancing on the flat edge as though the missing point had pierced him. The Gates of Mordor. Saruman trembles and struggles to conceal his loss of power. His jaw is slack and strangled sounds come from his mouth as he tries to speak. He turns slowly and looks back in the direction of the tower. Gandalf and Aragorn exchange looks.
Dare we hope?
The tower. The light floods down from above and is dissolving into the shape of the eye.
Frodo, take it off, master!
Frodo appears at Sam's side. His face is twisted in agony. His fingers claw his own flesh. Immediately, he collapses into Sam's arms. The orcs approach them a little wary. Sam takes the ring and swings it round on the long chain, trying to create a circle of inviolability. The orcs shun it, feeling pain when they get too close, but they press in, pushed from the back, anger rising like sharks building up courage to strike. Sam looks down anxiously at Frodo, who begins to stir back into life. The eye gets brighter. The orcs scream and charge. Sam slips on the ring. The orcs close at hand go crashing into each other and are thrown into spasms. The raging confusion begins again. Frodo is held by the invisible Sam. The violent chaos spreads through the tower. The light burns brighter. At the gates, Saruman makes a supreme effort to recover from the spasm that has betrayed him. He attempts to speak.
Run!
His arm works convulsively and he sinks to his knees like a man suffering from a stroke. Legolas and Gimli dart forward and snatch the effigy of Frodo from under the noses of Saruman's guards. They hold it up high and run back into their own ranks. Great cheers greet it, and a chant starts up.
Took long enough.
At the tower, Frodo is recovered and warding off orcs with Sting. The confusion is even greater. The light from above fades, then intensifies, then fades again. Sam reappears, pulling off the ring. He swings the ring around, attempting to drive off the orcs, but Frodo snatches it wildly from him. Their own struggle with the ring whips the orcs into greater frenzy and confusion. Together, they make a way through the massed orcs. Frodo slips on the ring for a moment, then Sam, then Frodo.
What?
The light of the eye suddenly reappears with burning intensity. Its force seems to calm the orcs. They gradually become frozen and look up at the eye as though awaiting instructions. Frodo is struck down by the force exerted by the eye.
It's burning me. I'm melting inside.
The door! Not far now, master.
The light grows even stronger, bleaching everything into a white translucency. Blindly, they stagger and roll and finally crash into the wall as they grope for the door. The orcs are all perfectly still now, looking upwards into the searing eye. Suddenly, there's a great roar from the orcs. They burst into activity. At the gate, Saruman rises up, his power recovered.
The mouth that Sauron opens, baby.
As a signal, the great chariot bearing Saruman splits into two parts as the horses drawing a gallop in opposite directions. A company of horses revealed black horses masked and blind against the light. Huge Orc warriors are mounted on them, bearing barbed lances. Behind them come a band of giant men. Hundreds of orcs vomit out of the jaws of Mordor in their wake. The tower, Sam and Frodo crawl and stumble through the door. They find themselves on the ragged rocks outside the tower. Mount Doom looms over them, the gloom rising out of its cone. A river of orcs gushes out of the door in the wake of Sam and Frodo. They scamper down the ragged rocks, dodging the orc patrols. The hobbits crouch into the rocks for shelter. They have escaped the tower. Only the open mountain lies before them. Gates of Mordor. The battle is joined. Aragorn's power, awesome. He is cutting swaths through the enemy. Gandalf was on the other flank, employing a mixture of conventional swordsmanship with his elf short sword and wizard tricks. We won't tell you what those wizard tricks are, but trust us, he's doing them. Dabs of lightning fly off his oscillating staff, and his mysterious behest, some of the giant men turn their clubs against their orc masters. They fight bravely and fiercely, but are pushed back by the overwhelming odds. They retreat in an orderly way, leaving many of their comrades killed and wounded, but they take a heavy toll of orcs. Slopes of Mount Doom. Sam and Frodo clamber wearily up the ever steeper slopes. Frodo has thrown off most of the orc clothes. He is naked above the waist, and the ring swings free. Sam still carries the frying pan and other implements, but he stops and loosens his belt. He throws his pack to the ground.
We shan't be doing much cooking. Might as well travel light.
Did the last Sam?
Sam rummages in his pocket. He pulls out a broken lembas.
Here, master, look what I found in my pocket. Eat.
Frodo shakes his head, refusing it. He looks back.
Eat that!
Below is the tower. Above it, Frodo sees the eye appear.
I have no hunger, Sam. Nothing is left of me. No taste of food, no memory of tree or flower, no sound of wind.
That's how I felt, master, with the ring on. That's how I felt.
On or off makes little difference now. On or off. I think I know how Gollum felt. Poor Gollum.
We should go on now, Mr. Frodo.
They see the forces of Mordor flowing out of the gates like a river, brown and gray in color. The orcs move forward inexorably and from all sides press against a much smaller force which stands out as a patch of vivid color. Far beyond, the fortress city of Minas Tirith is under siege. Flame and smoke curl up from the battlements.
Too late. We've come too late.
Keep going, Mr. Frodo. Keep trying.
Gates of Mordor. Gandalf and Aragorn fight to keep open a line of retreat, but sheer weight of numbers beats them. Gimli's axe swings, cruel and crude. Legolas is as nimble and graceful as a swordsman can be. They too are forced to retreat. One of the bearers of the effigy is struck with a lance, and Frodo's likeness topples forward. The orcs go wild, cutting and slashing at it. The head is half severed. A sword is driven through the heart. It crashes to the ground. So, Frodo now, apparently. Yeah. Slopes of Mount Doom. Frodo collapses.
Nearly there, master. A few more paces.
Frodo, half conscious, tries to crawl up the steep slope, but slips further back than he climbs. Sam pulls him, but is deeply exhausted himself. Sam looks down the slope. Groups of orcs are climbing the mountainside. They search and probe as they go.
The orcs, master. They're looking for us.
I know you're there. Come out. Come on out, Gollum, old friend.
Sam looks around nervously but can see nothing. But the sound is heard, which might be Gollum hissing.
Let me bear it a little way for you, Mr. Frodo.
Just stand away, it's mine. You can't help me in that way again, Sam. If you tried to take it, I should go mad.
Well, if I can't carry it, I can carry you, master.
And with that, Sam collects Frodo's limp form into his arms and starts up the mountain again. Sam looks back towards the gates of Mordor.
Look there, master. They're not beaten yet, and nor are we.
Sam sees that the Chosen are now completely surrounded and trapped inside the huge orc army. They are obviously doomed. However, they have formed a ring, and this thin circle of bright color holds yet against the enemy. Below the gates, the ring of the Chosen gradually shrinks. They fight on as wave upon wave of orcs confront them. Gandalf and Aragorn are side by side now. Defeat shows in their eyes. Eowyn fights next to Aragorn.
Against all reason, my bones believed that Frodo somehow would.
He is cut off by the need to fight a fresh assault and soon swept out of Aragorn's earshot.
I think we're losing.
I suppose that means poor Frodo and Sam have perished.
I don't think adventures are nearly as good as people make out.
I'd like to have seen the Shire again, just once.
The fighting sweeps them apart, and they can just yell out to each other from time to time.
Lie on the riverbank.
Smoke a crack pipe.
Fresh bread.
Fried mushroom.
Feather bed.
And they disappear in the fierce melee. The summit and crater of Mount Doom. Frodo is on his feet, but Sam is still half carrying him. The way is gray and ashen. Sulphurous vapors rise up from the pitted rock over which they travel. They move painfully, slowly. Behind them, the slopes are crawling with orcs, but they are still some way off. Frodo begins to crawl. The long chain around his neck reaches to the ground. The ring is dragged across the rock. A strange thing happens. The rock seems to tremble. They watch the ring with fear and fascination. It rumbles as it drags across the rock. Sam looks up.
You're there, master. What do you have to do, Mr. Frodo?
Just throw it into the fire that made it, that's all.
Unaccountably, Frodo begins to sob. They are both crawling now at the very end of their tether. Sam is struck by a sudden blow which throws him down. He looks up and Gollum is upon him. Sam gets in a kick and pushes him over. They struggle.
Wicked masters mustn't hurt precious.
Frodo watches the struggle. Gollum has become as thin as they are from his endless suffering quest.
I was expecting you, Gollum. I thought you'd be in at the end.
Gollum breaks free of Sam and hobbles over to Frodo. He clutches weakly at Frodo, but Frodo is weaker still and cannot evade him. Gollum pulls Frodo to the ground and grabs for the ring.
Give it to us. It's ours. Thief! Please, master.
Don't touch it, you Gollum! I'm Frodo, Lord of the Ring!
Gollum backs away, terror in his eyes, but behind the terror burns the eternal longing, the insatiable lust for the ring.
Please, master. If Precious goes, we'll die too.
Sam, mustering his strength, staggers over to Frodo and Gollum.
Go on, master. I'll hold him here.
Frodo drags himself on towards the precipitous edge of the crater. Gollum struggles with Sam, but they are both so exhausted that their movements are slow, languorous almost. As the ring gets closer to the brink, the rumblings of the earth increase. Sam hangs on desperately. They are bathed in the red glow of the fires.
Quick, master, do it! I can't hold him much longer.
A deeper tremor shakes them all. The eye appears, turning from the battle. It grows larger and fixes on the crater. Frodo cries out in agony, but he inches on towards the edge. Another tremor, stronger still. Frodo gets to his feet. He stands on the edge. He slowly takes the chain from his neck. He holds it quite still for a moment.
I have come, but I do not choose to do what I came to do. The ring is mine.
He sets the ring upon his finger and disappears. Sam cries out and is hurled back by the impact of a great rending of the earth. The eye grows to a blinding intensity. Below the gates of Mordor, as the earth shakes and Mount Doom rumbles, the forces of Mordor cease fighting. They turn to look up at the mountain. Gandalf, Aragorn, and the Chosen, fighting a bitter last stand, are stunned by the sudden pause. They too look up at the mountain. Hope lights up in Gandalf's face. The orcs on the battlefield and those patrolling Mordor suddenly burst into action. They race frantically up the mountainside. At Mount Doom, Gollum finds a last ounce of energy and tears free from Sam's tired hands. He runs up the slope to the edge of the crater. He gropes this way and that, then seizes the invisible Frodo. Sam crawls desperately over the erupting ground to try and help. Gollum fights his unseen foe with a mad fury on the edge of the abyss. To and fro he sways, sometimes teetering on the brink, then drawing back. Gollum draws up his clasped hands to his mouth. His fangs gleam as he bites at something. Frodo gives a cry and reappears, falling to his knees at the chasm's edge. Gollum, dancing crazily, holds aloft the ring, a finger still thrust within his circle.
Precious, my precious. Oh, my precious.
Gollum looks up adoringly at the ring. He steps back too far and finds himself teetering on the brink. He wavers for a moment and then with a shriek plunges into the abyss. Out of the depths comes his diminishing cry.
Precious, precious, precious.
Gollum plunges into the molten lava. There is a great roar. Flames leap up out of the inside of the crater, high into the sky. They burn into the great pall of gloom. Frodo is suddenly calm and aloof. He holds up the finger which isn't. Sam drags him away. The lands of Mordor quake and rend apart. The great tower of Sauron crumbles at its foundation and falls in ruins. The fire from the volcano reaches high into the gloom. The flames spread wildly across the sky. The gloom burns out and disappears. The sun shines through. It is a beautiful summer's afternoon. The earthquake subsides. All is calm. On both sides, weapons are thrown down. All thought of war is gone. All heart for fighting lost. The orcs, rather like slaves, shed their scaled skins of armor, revealing themselves to have disgusting white slug-like skin, but rather human. The risen dead stretch with relief in the sun and fade from sight. Frodo and Sam come stumbling, falling, loping down the mountainside toward the men and orcs below. Cheers and shouts and tears of joy mingle with the great fanfare of triumphant music. Men and orcs pick up abandoned swords and beat them on discarded shields. The wild cheers transform into a rhythmic hosanna with chants and counter-chants.
Hail
Frodo!
Lord
of the Nine
Fingers.
Kind of a cheap shot.
Hail
All 9 fingers.
King of men, orcs repented.
Merry and
Yeah, he's
Pippin
all
break
right.
away from the others and run ahead to greet Sam and Frodo.
Hail,
Frodo, Lord of the Rings. How many times I gotta do this?
There's a lot of hailing in this. They stagger down until suddenly Frodo finds he has fallen into Gandalf's arms.
You did it. You hobbit.
Jesus.
I thought you were dead, but then I thought I was dead many times.
Gandalf, holding Frodo aloft, starts down the slope, the others following. As they go toward the Gates of Mordor, Frodo is passed from hand to hand. Gimli, Legolas, Éowyn, Éomer all take their turn. Éomer and Éowyn, who clearly have met him before, right? The naked effigy is now passed over the heads of the crowd. A sea of hands stretch to touch it, to tear a fragment from it. It passes rapidly across the crowd, disintegrating until nothing is left of it. Accompanying this, a chant begins.
Frodo
lives! Frodo lives! Sorry, man.
Make Middle-earth great again!
Frodo lives. It's a little underrated.
The Gates of Mordor. They walk through the gates. The cheers and triumphant music continues. Gimli looks disparagingly at the terrible, grimacing jaws of stone of which the gates are made. With a master stroke, he strikes one corner of the mouth, transforming half of the face into a smile.
Oh, God.
Joker now.
Subtlety.
Now the gates are more like the Greek mask of comic tragedy. Many stop to admire and discuss Gimli's work. I feel like there are more important things, but he slings his axe across his shoulder and walks off, leaving them to it. The crowd argues about the enigmatic stone face, forgetting Frodo.
Hey! Bitches!
Glad you did that. Architecture. Outside the gates of Minas Tirith, Frodo, Sam, and Gandalf walk on through the crowd, with Gimli and Legolas following. Celebrations continue. Aragorn sits on an improvised throne on a raised platform. Éowyn is at his side. Aragorn reads a parchment, using a glass as he seems a little long-sighted. Pippin, the jester, and Merry, acting as page-in-waiting to Éowyn, yawn with boredom. Frodo, Sam, and Gandalf pass this scene, trying to catch the eye of their former comrades, but Aragorn is much too involved. However, Merry and Pippin see them and wave.
Hi, Frodo.
No, baby.
Frodo, Sam, and Gandalf, with Gimli and Legolas behind, cross the Pelennor fields. As they trudge on, they pass a desultory group of men and orcs gathered around an old man in a cloak. He is squatting on the ground, playing the sleight of hand game of the cups and the pea. PEA, just clarify. He has 3 helmets instead of cups, and he uses a marble, or is it an eyeball? The man glances up with an apologetic smile. It is Saruman. Gandalf shakes his head, despairing of Saruman. Middle Earth, various day. The little party walks on. They pass the withered tree under which Boromir was buried. The tree has burst into red blossom. They look at it distractedly and pass on. They have come to the road that lends down to the Shire.
I can't, dear Sam. I've been pierced by blades, sting, and tooth. I can't.
Sam covers his ears. He will not listen. He turns to hide his face, distraught. Gandalf ruffles Sam's hair affectionately. Sam walks away down the road by the waterfall toward the valley of the beloved Shire. From below, a crowd of hobbits with banners of welcome come up to meet him. Sam's buxom girlfriend runs ahead and embraces him. Frodo averts his face sadly from the scene. He walks slowly on, humming "The road goes ever on and on." Gandalf fumbles in his pockets of his soiled white cloak and produces a crumpled firework. He lights it and throws it in the air above the hobbits. It splutters and fails to light. Gandalf shrugs ruefully and walks on. They are strung out now. First Frodo, then Gandalf, then Gimli and Legolas.
I'm so strung out, man.
Yeah. Sand dunes.
The fireworks are a really thin metaphor for this ending.
I do not see the Peter Jackson ending. There's like 12. Standing in the sand dunes is the slender figure of Arwen, her dress and hair undulating in the breeze. She sees Frodo and beckons him on. She turns and is hidden again by the dunes, beach and sea. The sound of waves and the call of gulls. Frodo and Gandalf cross the wet, shimmering sand. A small sailing boat lies at anchor. They head towards it. Behind them, Gimli and Legolas appear from the sand dunes. They stop to take in the sight of the sea.
The sea, at last I behold it. Wailing voices spoke of it in dreams. It was the gulls, man.
Gimli picks up a shell, inspects it, puts it to his ear.
Of stone, yet alive. Listen, Legolas, it will remind you of the elms.
Legolas listens to the shell. They look up. Frodo and Gandalf have waded into the sea and are being helped aboard the little vessel. Legolas shades his eyes. He can see several figures in the craft. Galadriel, Elrond, Bilbo, and Arwen. The boat is cluttered with ancient tomes, mysterious alchemical objects, beautiful cloth, and dried fish. Most important part, obviously.
Yeah.
They greet the newcomers with smiles and gently embrace. Their lips move, but Legolas cannot hear what they say.
When I was a
And
child.
so the last of my fair dudes depart forever.
They look at each other disconsolately. Gimli indicates their surroundings, the beach.
Let us stay here. 'Tis neither cave nor forest.
It is not quite leaving, nor is it yet remaining, for a beach is between, like the twilight, man.
Men may need others than men.
Okay. Gimli looks out to sea. The little craft moves away. He squints but cannot make out Frodo or Gandalf. He cups his hand to his ear. Immediately, he hears Gandalf's voice.
Across the ocean, I shall talk less and laugh more.
But it is a hobbit's laugh that comes tinkling over the sound of the waves, and it belongs unmistakably to Frodo. He laughs happily, and the others join him. A rainbow arcs up from the water beyond the little craft.
Look, only 7 colors. The world is failing.
Sorry, last line. We should.
What is this, Canadian?
Let's try that again.
Indeed, the world is failing. I don't know why, but
The tiny vessel sails on, a smudge on the glistening sea. Tom Bombadil appears now. A smudge on the glistening sea. The end.
And scene.
Isn't it so important they gave the final line to Legolas? Because of course.
But his epic last line is, "Indeed, the world is failing."
That's not bad. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean,
Legolas
most of the
and
better story
Gimli
for
retire
Legolas.
to
Oh
the
my
beach.
god.
They're just gonna lay on the beach and be beach bums all day. Gimli becomes like the Jimmy Buffett of Middle Earth.
Just because it's not cave or forest.
Wasted away.
It is one of the other types of places. Yeah.
Yes.
Had they considered a mountain?
Ooh, or a field.
Maybe.
They just thought of
A desert?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
Great
my.
use.
That was fun.
That was
That was
hilarious.
fun.
I'm
Oh
very
my
glad
God.
I found this script.
I can't
That
imagine
was-
why it wasn't made, but now I want to start the GoFundMe to actually film it.
You're gonna have to Army of the Dead John Boorman first. He's
Okay, I'm
gone a lot.
gonna find the GoFundMe to burn all of the copies.